Hello out there, my name is Lalu Akonde, and you are on to Inside Sources. And here is my take for today. Send those minor protesters home. But first, Inside Sources was preparing to take a stand in support of the president's firm stance in redirecting the resolution of the National Economic Council that asked for the withdrawal of the tax reform bills that he had sent to the National Assembly previously. The governors took the decision at the National Economic Council meeting that was held on Thursday, requesting further consultations. The decisions of NEC, in the same week as the decision of the Northern Governors Forum that rejected the bill, raised concerns about an attempt, possible, to stall tax reforms, and also overlooked the National Assembly's role as the ultimate forum for national consultations on issues of governance. President Tinubu's insistence that the bill should not be withdrawn from the National Assembly and that it should pass through the appropriate legislative processes is very commendable. Why? It prioritizes the timely resolution of the issue rather than allow an open-ended consultation. Now, I'd like to add, the National Assembly, not the governors' forums, is the appropriate venue for consultations. Now, let's come back to the recent and more alarming reports of numerous Nigerian minors that have been detained since the End Bad Governance protest in August. That issue demands our immediate attention. We must address this urgently as a nation. The balance between enforcing order and safeguarding citizens' rights is important for our enforcement agencies to note this. On Friday, suddenly, we found out that tens of Nigerian minors, about 38 of them, have been in detention since the End Bad Governance protest of August. They must have been incarcerated for about 90 days already. When they appeared on Friday in court, most of them were looking frail and malnourished. Some lawyers actually had to raise funds to give the kids something to eat, seeing how they were looking. In fact, some of them slumped, forcing the presiding judge to abruptly adjourn proceedings. Same Friday, on Inside Sources, we featured the story of some other End Bad Governance protesters who had been in detention for 68 days. And in the end, the federal government dropped all charges against them. Let me say that again. After spending 68 days in detention, where they were harassed and even tortured, the federal government said no more charges against them. Now, won't the same thing happen to these minors that we saw on Friday in Abuja? Even if the government has a good case against them, and there are more decent ways to conduct this matter than this embarrassingly shoddy manner that showcases us as a people very poorly in a digital age where information travels faster at times than the speed of light? Oh no, we are better than that. Now, the kids that we saw in court on Friday in Abuja, they are being charged on terrorism counts, according to news reports. And they have been in detention in various parts of the country beyond the time that is allowed by law already. As if that wasn't bad enough, the court has now set stringent bail conditions that these minors can't possibly attain, including 10 million naira bail sum. In the same week that a federal legislator got 500,000 bail in a case where he has already honed up to his own responsibility for bad behavior. All of this shocking display is a poor reflection on us as a people and should have no place in a democracy. We can't even recall that such a thing happened in the heady days of our struggle against military rule. The cruel part we are forcing those minors to work is abhorrent. It has no place in nation building. After all, those young folks are the future of our country. It is bad enough that engineer Khalid Aminu and others were detained for 68 days in Kaduna by the DSS in that state. They were also tortured in ways that don't depict us as a people with high democratic aspirations. And now these minors. We want to be regarded as Africa's giants. We want to take a seat on the United Nations Security Council. We want to be an outstanding member in the Committee of Nations, as we ought to, and for which we are otherwise eminently qualified as a people. But these unforced errors and disgraceful conduct of our law enforcement agencies have to stop, and it has to stop urgently. We see that the Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, after the embarrassing scene in court, has taken over the case from the police. God bless him for that. We recall that he had the common sense, the good sense, to terminate some of the other meaningless similar cases in the past, and is now asking for an earlier date for the next hearing in this case so that it can be properly sorted out. He should completely review this matter, that is the Attorney General, and remove the shame that all of us are carrying right now regarding that matter as a people. But we must ask, how come the Ministry of Justice wasn't in the picture before now? Finally, this kind of shenanigan can tarnish President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's democratic credentials. And it's important for us to say that it can also annihilate any claim that we have as a respectable nation to international recognition. It is a national disgrace, and we must find a way to end it by all legal means possible. Please, let us send those minor protesters home. And there you have it. Inside Sources will be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, as we continue the conversation on the future of Nigeria, I have with me an eminent Nigerian politician who is the minority leader in the Federal House of Representatives, representing PDP from the Obiakpo Federal Constituency. I'd like to welcome Honorable Kingsley Chinda. Honorable, you're welcome to Inside Sources.
My pleasure, Lalu.
Thank you for coming. Now, so here on Inside Sources, we try to focus on the future of Nigeria. That's the perspective that we use. And I'm aware that you're one of the people pushing the idea of something close to parliamentary system for Nigeria's future. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think that the presidential system that we have used so far should be replaced with something that is akin to parliamentary? Why do you think that will give Nigeria a better future?
Well, thank you first for this opportunity. I would want to say that as a parliamentarian, in fact, as a public office holder, one of our major assignments is to solve problems that we have identified in the society. And you will agree with me, and I'm sure most Nigerians will agree that presently our country appears or is not where it ought to be. Our country is far from where it ought to be and where we expect it to be. So some of the things we have asked ourselves are, what is wrong with our country? Everybody will say politically, socially, religiously, and all that there are problems. But to identify the problems as parliamentarians and look at legislative solutions to some of these problems, we discovered, perhaps rightly or wrongly, but truly and very sincerely, we discovered that the system of government that we operate today appears not to be the best for us as a nation. And some of the reason is that we appear not to have considered our peculiar circumstance and background in importing systems of government to our country, in importing constitutions and, in fact, legislations to our country. And take the presidential system that we are currently operating. If you look at the United States government, you find out that their background is completely different with the Nigerian background. I will give you an example. Place a public office holder in the United States, allow him to exercise discretion on an issue, and then allow a Nigerian public office holder to also exercise same discretion on same issue. I'm sure that you will agree that the public office holder from the United States is more likely to exercise that discretion in the interest of the state, much more than the Nigerian public office holder.
I'm not saying in the interest of the public, really.
public or the entire state, because to them, it's the American state, American dream. I'm not saying that Nigerian public office holder will not consider the public at all, but the United States public office holder is more likely. And what are the reasons? Look at their background, where they are coming from. Issues of tribe, issues of religion, in fact, even state. It's not as much in play as it is in Nigeria. Now, in the United States, you could have, in a family, the father could come from one state, the son is from another state, the daughter is from another state. So if you're exercising discretion that has to do with states, multiple states, you know that you are likely to be dispassionate in exercising that discretion. In Nigeria, what you hear is that I am from the south, I am from the north, or I am from Niger Delta, and so our resources, Niger Delta resources, must be secured. I'm from the north, so northern resources must be secured. We do not place strong emphasis on Nigeria as a nation. And that's why the question is still raging. Are we actually a nation? And so, if you import laws from the United States to such a clime, there's a likelihood that the law will not serve the purpose for which you have imported that law. So what do? We must look at our background. We must craft laws, putting into consideration the background of our own people. And so if you craft laws that has to do with discretion for public office holders, the latitude you give to the American should not be exactly the same latitude you give to a Nigerian public office holder. You tighten the nozzle a little bit more for the Nigerian.
Because of
knowing
the circumstances.
knowing that there's likelihood or higher likelihood of abuse in Nigeria. But we import these laws, hook, line, and sinker, as if it will be a magic wand. Because it works in US, it must work in Nigeria. And so today, in Nigeria, you find out that individuals appear to be stronger than our institutions. Right from Mr. President to the ministers, to governors, commissioners, even to the local government council chairmen and councillors. And that's why people bow to us as public office holders. As if we can,
the Lord and Master.
Of course, that we are the Lord of the manor. It's because of the system that we operate. So if we are crafting laws, we must put this into consideration and then begin to ensure that people are discouraged from this kind of practices. And so we have looked at all this and we said, look, for our country today, we must strengthen institutions. We must ensure that we reduce wastage in the public sector, which everybody is also complaining of. We must also ensure that public office holders are more accountable to the people. They must have that fear of God. I don't want to say fear of the people, but truly public office holders should have fear of the people in arriving at decisions. And then we must have people who will be hands-on in offices. The Senate should not be a place for it should not be a retirement home
for governors,
for politicians,
especially governors.
For politicians,
I know you won't say that, but that's fine.
The office of the president
yes,
should not be a place for weaklings, for people who are tired. It should be an office for somebody who is ready, capable, and able to deliver on the assignment. And so if you have a quasi-parliamentary system where the president of the country is from the Senate and the head of government, the prime minister, is from the House of Reps, and they are there to give account over government policies to members of parliament
on a regular basis.
Of course, what you have, even if it is once a month, you must give report and accounts to parliament. You find out that you cannot have a president that is unfit to govern the country. It's not possible.
I agree with you. And please go ahead. Finish
now,
your point.
If you also look at some of the things that we meet in course of serving the Nigerian public, yes, sometimes we are heavily criticized. But for those of us who sit back and look at these things, to be sincere, some of these things are morally wrong. But if you look at our laws, they are right. And so what do we do as parliamentarians? Those things that we know that are morally wrong, but are legally correct. We should begin to jig the laws to also get them in line
to move
with
towards
the feelings,
the
to move
morals.
towards what the society actually wants, to get the law closer to morals. That's the only way we can have a sane society.
Okay, interesting. So just so we can have a conversation, I actually like your opening remarks, and that was why I actually stepped back so that you can express it very clearly. But I want us to dimension it now a little bit deeply. I am also of the view, by the way, that the presidential system, and I've said this over and again, I'd like to say it and get your own take. The presidential system gives an opportunity for whoever is the president, and like you also said, even the governor, not to be engaged. He or she, under our laws, under the presidential system, is capable. He has the powers to determine the level of his engagement. So, for instance, if he doesn't want to talk to the press, if he doesn't want to engage with people, if he doesn't want to take the tough, difficult questions in a public forum, he's completely able to avoid that. And we have seen precedents. We used to have President Obasanjo do maybe once in a month a media interaction, and then it has gone to the point where the last president did a press interview, maybe for the entire 8 years, maybe 2 or 3 times. And now it's almost 2 years. We don't have, nobody has sat down to interrogate the president. So because of that and the experience that I have had from the inside, I am clear in my mind that the presidential system is not going to help us to advance, some of the things that you've said and to actually deliver democratic dividend to the people. The question that I wanted to ask you now is that, can you tell us some of the specifics in the bill that some of you are pushing forward? Can you give us some of the specifics that addresses and that creates the hope that what we are talking about, what you guys are pushing, will actually increase transparency and accountability?
Thank you again, and I appreciate you for giving that support to this push and move towards a homegrown parliamentary system of government.
It's an imperative.
The bill we have proposed, it's for a phased system, commencing from the local government level. And then it's a system where you have just one election. So saving cost starts with the first step you take. That is the election itself. So
you mean that the elections will be held in one day?
One day, and election, for parliamentary election, simpliciter. So when you conduct the election for parliament, councillors, state assembly, and national assembly, that is it. So amongst the councillors, they will pick a chairman and deputy chairman. Amongst the state assembly members, they will pick a governor and deputy governor. And then amongst members of National Assembly, you pick the prime minister and the president.
Excellent. So no more presidential elections,
no more executive
elections.
And so you have saved a lot of fund. Now, the implication again is that if you are bringing anybody out as a councillor, you know that the person must have the capacity to be chairman of that local government council. So it will improve the quality of persons that come up. You are sending anybody to the National Assembly, you know that there is the chance or chances that that person could be the prime minister or the president of the country. So you will send your first 11 to public offices. You will no longer want to manage, because if you send somebody who is not qualified, it means that you also directly edging yourself out of any opportunity that comes. So you find that the quality of persons that will come up will improve tremendously. And the same system, if the president is from the House of Reps, monthly, he has to give account of government business to the parliament. And so government policies will be discussed, parliamentarians will be fully aware, and by implication, Nigerians will be aware. I also give an example of some of the things we have witnessed. You recall when we were talking about even a contract entered with China in Chinese language, whether it is true or not. But those things cannot come up under this system.
Because it will be openly
people,
discussed.
it will be openly discussed. People will be aware of the terms of such agreement before it is entered into. And so government policies, even recently, we were talking about the CBN and issues of recruitment, and then the issues of closure of offices in Lagos and all that. These are government policies that Nigerians never understood. Even the parliament never understood what was happening. And so everybody was kicking. And the time will dissipate in attacking things that government has failed to carry Nigerians along will completely be removed. And aside that, what we have proposed is that because we know that we cannot be perfect, we propose that we start with the local government councils.
Okay.
Try it out, look at the mistakes and the errors, and then continue to make consequential amendments of the laws
all the way up
as we begin to see the loopholes. And then after the local government councils, we go dovetail to the state level, where you have the state assembly elections, and then the governor and deputy governor comes from the House of Assembly. And where there are mistakes, errors, and all that, we also keep correcting ourselves before finally we get to the national level. Before we get to the national level, all the consequential amendment of our constitution and other laws would have been made and perfected.
Okay.
And because we're also aware that some persons might think that we are targeting perhaps the present government and then we don't want them to conclude their tenure and all that, or that it has to do with a particular tribe or region trying to
to hijack
the system or witch hunt any other group. We have also agreed that it will be good for this system to set in place and take off after the 8 years
of the current
that is allowed for the current set of public office holders, so that nobody is being witch hunt. Nobody is being targeted. And aside that, we also believe that if it comes to running of government, like in the parliament, if you have the ministers amongst parliamentarians, it is either you are up and doing or you leave office because you are accountable to your colleagues. And running of the office of the minister and his constituency office in parliament is on the same budget. Today we are complaining that members of National Assembly bought SUV for themselves.
160 million worth of
fine.
Each.
If ministers, I'm sure that ministers all would have also bought, if not all, most would have also bought SUVs for themselves. So if you are a minister and a parliamentarian, what it means is that you buy one. That will serve the two offices. So it will still save cost. So these are some of the things that we have put in place, and we expect that as we commence, we are not saying that we have a perfect document. We'll keep making consequential amendments
to it.
But whether there is need to rejig the present system that we run, the answer is yes.
I wanted to ask you, so the National Assembly is Nigeria's parliament. And even based on what we have discussed so far today, the parliament is meant to be where the people's will is expressed, Now, a few things have happened, since 1999 up to now, that I think, is still affecting the reputation of the National Assembly. For instance, this past week, one of your members, had an altercation with a hailing driver, actually slapped him and all of that. How do you think this kind of behavior, or put differently, what's your own take, and what is the House doing to prevent this kind of interaction between people who are meant to be the custodians of the people's expression of their will? You will expect a representative to be the one actually sorting out issues with the people, not the one afflicting them like the representative did. So I just use that as an example that the National Assembly has not had a very good reputation. You talked about the issue of the 160 million SUVs. And of course, yes, ministers also have the same thing. But I guess it's because of the numbers. Over 400 of you in the National Assembly, and people are saying that it's a very difficult time, 160 million per person, they could have used that money for all kind of stuff. So all of this is accruing to people not really trusting the National Assembly. What are you guys doing about that? Or aren't you concerned?
Well, let me start from the specific. Right. The issue that has to do with our colleague and the Uber operator. Everybody condemned it. We also condemned it. I called him personally and we spoke. And clearly he also showed remorse. He's human. Sometimes you wake on the wrong side. I think that he didn't do well. And he has actually apologized to Nigerians. Presently, he's being prosecuted for that. He's in court. Yeah. He's at the magistrate court. The House has also sent him to the disciplinary committee of the House on the same issue. Okay. And so we also expect that perhaps he might suffer double jeopardy if he's undergoing prosecution and he is disciplined in the House. But in essence, I don't think that anybody would agree that that is a standard for parliamentarians. They call us honorable members. Yeah. And so we should be honorable in character within and outside the parliament. Absolutely. And people should look up to us. I keep saying that public office holders are like pastors or imam. They should be role model in society. Absolutely. And so people should look up to you, both in your character, the language you use, and all that should portray that kind of dignity and respect to the people. After all, without the people, you will not be there. Right. The first lesson I give to those who work with me in parliament is to educate them that the office I occupy is not mine. It belongs to the people of Obiabo. And so if you are not ready to respect them, you don't need to be part of this system. Good. Any day I am tired of doing that, I go to my private office. I'm a lawyer by profession. You have a second address. Exactly. And so I owe nobody anything in my private office. But in public office, I must know that I am not a boss to myself. So I join our colleague in very sincerely and deeply apologizing to the young man involved and to Nigerians. It is not in our character. It is not how it should be. And our colleague too has also shown remorse. Now on the other issue of this arm of government, this is an unsung arm of government, the parliament. And let me also say that some of the things we suffer could also, because we are supposed to be watchdog on the executive arm. Yeah. And the executive controls the fund. Yeah. And so to also clip our arm or our wings, the executive must also try to blackmail us and paint us in bad light before Nigerians. So some of these things I say that it could be coming from the other arm of government to blackmail us and make Nigerians lose confidence in us so that even when we talk, they don't mind them. They have an ulterior motive. Because you also find out that when the parliament goes for oversight, sometimes they don't even believe in your sincerity. I have had several experiences, even in public spaces, where members of House of Representatives, I feel ashamed when you hear such things because you know how much you have put in and you know your own intentions. But I will also want to beg that sometimes we also need to be encouraged. Yeah. Sometimes you need to be encouraged because, you know, when you go out there and you are faced with this kind of perception, it doesn't also encourage you much.
But you understand the perception, though. You understand why.
Clearly. But in every part, every system, every arm of government, you have these issues. And that's why we are agitating for a change. Because the discretion, the latitude that is given to public office holder is too much.
Too wide.
And so we must begin to curb it. In the parliament, we have a committee that is like a disciplinary committee, the ethics committee of parliament. Why did we set up that committee? Because we know that some persons might misbehave. Right. So it's not a perfect environment. But then there are still people who are studiously, who are sincerely working in the interest of this country. So we shouldn't just sweep everybody under the carpet.
True.
Nigeria itself, as a country, we still say that we have hope. And truly we have hope. But then, are we doing what we ought to do? No. Public office holders do not enjoy the confidence of the people. But then it is not every public office holder too that is in that class. So what I'm saying is that, yes, while we criticize and hit hard, if we see commendation, we should also commend to encourage others. So it should be the carrot and the stick approach.
Okay. All right. Because of our time, let's begin to wrap up. I wanted to also ask you about the place of the opposition. You are the minority leader in the Federal House of Representatives. Do you think that the way politics and governance is being practiced today in Nigeria with the circumstances, do you think that we have an opposition? And I'll give just one or two examples so that you can respond. So we have a situation where the National Assembly has oversight. As a matter of fact, the National Assembly has powers of appropriation. As we are speaking now, we don't even know which budget we are operating. It's about 2 or 3. Each time the executive comes, they give a new budget, and there's a bit of confusion. The National Assembly has a responsibility there. And then in the appointment of people to public offices, there has been instances where, for instance, the presidency will send names of people who are obviously, openly political. Even people that are, if not card-carrying members of parties, people that are sufficiently perceived in that light, nominating them to be members of INEC, either in the state or the national commission. All of these things suggest to us that there is no opposition in the parliament, in the National Assembly, because we don't see any kind of pushback. What's your take, Honorable?
Well, clearly, I would not say that there is no opposition in the National Assembly. You know that the minorities will have their say, but majority will have their way. I take the issue of operating 4 budgets, which is a life example you have just brought. When it came up, we vehemently opposed it on the floor of the parliament. We said no, we criticized it, we opposed it, but it was put to vote. And it passed. And so, having decided by majority vote, it is a decision of the National Assembly. And so the Nigerian out there, National Assembly has approved it. So nothing happened.
But you guys you didn't raise L.
We did.
Okay.
We did. That day, the floor was rowdy. It was a little bit rancorous on the floor of the parliament on that day. In fact, at a point, the House was to adjourn on it. And so, normally when it happens like that, members are called from their offices to come and vote and all that and all that. So, yes, I will also say that when we started the 10th Assembly.
Sorry, what about the nomination of people into INEC? What about that?
Sure, the nomination of persons to INEC, if they are card-carrying members, it should not fly. I completely agree with you.
And we don't see any opposition. There was no opposition at all.
Well, if you also look at it from the other angle, I think that litigation is one thing that we should also explore. Because like I have told you, you can have your say, but the majority will have their way. But then we have non-governmental organizations operating if individuals will be shy from going to court. And so the non-governmental organization should be sensitized enough to take up such matters and have a decision on them.
The problem is that oftentimes, those cases don't go anywhere. And the Constitution empowers the National Assembly, as a matter of fact, for the most part, the Senate, to be able to do the pushback. That would have been effective. But yeah, we have a lot of cases. Serap goes to court every Sunday, but hey, I don't know whether they've even won one case out of this stuff. It's good that they are there to hold people to account. But I'm saying that National Assembly is the one that has the power, the authority to actually say to the executive, no, you can't do that.
If you look at the makeup of opposition today in the National Assembly, it's like it's never been before. We have 7 opposition political parties.
Oh, 7.
7. As against
PDP, LP, ABGA,
NNPP, SDP,
okay,
YPP,
okay. Oh, wow.
Right? 7. As it's never been before. So it's more complex than it used to be. However, if you also look at the position of opposition in most of those issues, we take clear stand on them.
Now,
but now amongst the opposition, if you have 7 political parties, and the ruling party is able to get 3 or 4 political parties out of the 7,
so
it has reduced your number. So when you go to vote, you're not likely to succeed. But that does not mean that you should relax. So you always make your point. I give an example again. The trial we saw yesterday of infants.
Yes, the minors. I was going to.
The opposition has taken a position on it quickly, even if the House is not going to sit at plenary for next week. But we have sent out our position on that. We condemned it squarely.
Did that come from are you referring to the one of former VP Atiku? Or the party?
The party in Parliament, the caucus in Parliament.
Okay.
The caucus in Parliament has also taken a position, condemning it squarely, and then asking the Attorney General to immediately take step. And we have also forwarded a correspondence to him.
Okay. It's So
sometimes when we forward such correspondence, if the press picks it up, so be it. But we will never sleep.
It's important. It's important, as we conclude, Honorable Chinda, it's important in a democracy, in a party democracy, to have a strong opposition.
True.
I am perceived to be a progressive, and I served an administration of APC, for 8 years, but I would rather have a strong opposition, because if you don't have a strong opposition in a democracy, is good as a dictatorial government. So the place and the role of opposition is very, very critical, and we should do everything to protect it. It is in our best interest.
I agree.
That's what. I
agree with you. And for those who think that we're dovetailing into a one-party state, I would say that is a dream, and not just a dream, but it will end up a nightmare.
I don't think a one-party state will work in Nigeria. We shouldn't allow it.
Even where you push yourselves into a one-party state, there will be an implosion within that party, because you cannot kill opposition, no matter how hard you try.
It's very important.
The voice of the opposition is there to balance the system and also provide checks. And then for any sincere public office holder, you should also encourage opposition, because it will help you to sit up and deliver on the oath of your office. When you have people that are actually working and criticizing what you're doing, you're likely to perform better. And to Nigerians, clearly, I will again say that the system of government that we operate, the presidential system of government, is not good enough for us. The time has come for us to rejig that system of government and come up with a homegrown system that will serve our country better, and then will place us where we hope to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Kingsley Chinda, a legal practitioner and a prominent politician, the minority leader of the Federal House of Representatives. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources, and thank you for your contributions, to national development. And hopefully, we will push it until we get a great Nigeria that we believe is actually the destiny of this country.
Amen.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, we want to look at the issue of the tax reforms that the current Tinubu administration has put forward. Quite a few things happened this week. The National Economic Council, where the governors hold sway, concluded that the bill should be withdrawn for further consultations. Right after that, a day after that, as a matter of fact, the president responded and said that those consultations should take place in the National Assembly. To discuss that issue today, I have with me two leading Nigerian public intellectuals. To my far right, I have Mr. Mojeed Dahiru, a newspaper columnist and TV analyst. Mr. Dahiru, welcome back to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And right to my immediate right, I have a policy analyst and strategist who is also the Group Managing Director of Global Investment and Trading Company, Malam Baba Yusuf. Welcome back to Inside Sources.
Thank you. It's good to be here again.
All right,
Prof.
Thank you. So let's start from Mojid. What's your take? You have the National Economic Council holding a meeting. As you know, NEC is a constitutionally mandated a body that advises the president on economic issues. And they said that, okay, Mr. President, pull back this bill that you sent to the assembly, let's have more consultations. And President basically said no. What's going on, Mojid?
I think the president is simply trying to double down on what he believes is the best by way of tax reforms for Nigeria. A lot of work was put into the effort that has yielded this proposed bill that is to be sent to the National Assembly. And so I'm sure the president himself must have gone through, the letters of the bill and appreciated the intent behind the letters enough to think that it is best for Nigeria. And he's willing to allow the National Assembly through, their work on passing the bill into law to allow for any further consultations through public hearings, through committee works. So I think the president is in order. This is the beauty of democracy. I mean, we shall contestation of ideas.
Yes.
So long as it's for the good of the people. So I think it's a very healthy development. And the president say, look, okay, well, I'm listening to your advice, but I think any observations you have should be taken to the National Assembly, which has statutory responsibility to consult even while they are trying to pass the bill into law. And it is within their prerogative to either reject the bill or pass it into law.
Okay, thank you, Mojid. Baba.
Yeah, it's a very interesting development. When I saw the NEC coming with that position, I was smiling because the democracy is evolving, Prof, because I was thinking aloud, two feedbacks. First of all, the NEC as a body which includes all the governors of Nigeria saying proper consultation, blah, blah, blah. And then my constituency, the Northern Governors Forum, coming to say, hey, we have issues with this. And I was just smiling to say, it's very interesting. Mr. President set up this committee about a year ago.
Yeah.
And this is serious conversation. And the governors or all the stakeholders know and this is going to lead to a paradigm shift. I would have expected the governors with profound respect to have reached out, even if there has not been that reach out from the part of either the presidential committee. They have direct access to Mr. President to say, Your Excellency, your committee is not speaking to us. For example, that would have, engendered more consultation at that point.
Right.
And because in fairness to the committee, they've been visible in terms of speaking to the public as regards what they are doing. Although I have qualms with the fact that there's opaqueness with regards to the content that has been sent to the National Assembly. They have a website. I thought this is something that would have gone in there for more robust debates. But that being said,
you mean that the committee's
the presidential committee, yes, because
the bill is not there.
It's not there.
It should be there.
It's not there. So, this is for Nigerians. This Gestapo approach of doing things in silos is what leads to what we have today. But I'm still going to hold the governors accountable for this because Mr. President made a move. The committee had been engaging. If there's a gap, it behoves on the governors to reach out and demand that this is done. And of course, the public now will know that it has been sent to the National Assembly. The public have not seen it. One may argue that there will be public hearings, but we know what happens to those public hearings. That being said, the position of the president I align with. It is at the National Assembly. We cannot reinvent the wheel. The governors have representations. Nigerians have representations at the National Assembly. Then let's see how they can now, and that is the part I'm talking about. Let us see the influence the governors have on their senators and the House of Reps to ensure that whatever it is they want to happen in the interest of Nigerians happen, if it is for the interest of Nigerians.
Okay, so let's take it forward. Now, do you think, Mojid, that we have had in this country quite a bit of pushback on major things by the governors? The rise in the powers of the governors in determining the fate of presidential candidates or even the direction of the party, has been quite noticeable. Do you think that the governors are trying to stall this tax reform? Now, many people know that our tax to GDP ratio is one of the lowest, anywhere. Do you think that's what the governors are trying to do? Are they trying to stall it indeed, in your view?
Okay, I think the governors, specifically speaking, and the northern governors, along with traditional rulers from the north and some other leaders of thought from that region, apparently have a problem with just one aspect of the entire gamut of the bill, and which is the principle behind the redistribution of VAT,
yeah,
which is going to be based on some level of derivation. That is, in simple terms, more of the VAT might be returned to where they were derived from, so to say. And this seems to be the core of the issue. I'm not interested in or they're against expansion of the tax net or even increase of tax because it increases their own revenues as well. That's not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem now is if you use derivation to distribute VAT, they believe that some of the states in the north might not have as much as they're having now, while some other states might have more. And so it will lose their own revenue. So this is the core of the issue. But in principle, I think that the proposition to distribute VAT, value-added tax, which is essentially consumption tax, along with the principle of derivation, is for me one of the most progressive pieces of legislation I've seen in the history of Nigeria when it comes to revenue allocation. And I would even recommend that to be expanded beyond just VAT, to even company income tax and to personal income tax. I believe that taxes generated should be returned substantially back to where they are generated from, to form part of the budgetary provision for social amenities.
In that...
that one is called taxpayers' money working for you. And let me also say this. Sometimes I wonder, who is a northerner in today's Nigeria and who is a southerner? Or rather, who is in the northerner or who is in the southerner? I say this because Alhaji Aliko Dangote, for as long as I can remember, lives in Lagos.
Yeah.
Has his headquarters in Lagos. His single largest investment is in Lagos. So Aliko Dangote qualifies to be a Lagosian by every means. Now you compare that to someone like, say, Fabian Wara, the developer of FI properties in Abuja, for example, the largest developer in this town.
Yeah.
All of his businesses are domiciled in this town.
And he's from the east.
He's from the east. So between Dangote, for instance, and Fabian Wara of FI properties, who is a northerner, who is a southerner in the context of tax payment and tax remittances?
Even in the context of business development in our country.
So what I'm saying in essence is, if you think that Lagos is going to get the bulk of the VAT when they redistribute it because of the principle of derivation, you must be rest assured that out of the 20 million plus that live in Lagos, probably half of that population are people from the so-called northern Nigeria. Or in essence, every part of the federated in Nigeria today is a microcosm of Nigeria. Yeah. Every part of it, down to Ekiti, down to Bayelsa. So you have, quote and unquote, I don't really like to use this adjective. You have northerners that live permanently in the south.
Yeah.
You have southerners
living
permanently. They have no second address in the north. So on whose behalf are northern governors really speaking for? So in essence, what this will do for me is that it will unlock, it will incentivize some level of economic productivity and leadership responsibility. Because no longer will you sit down as a governor, as a local government chairman, and you get allocation monthly without lifting a finger. So if you want to generate
internal
taxes enough to benefit by derivation principle, you must now begin to put those building blocks down that can boost your economy. And I say this because all of us will be beneficiaries at the end of the day. Every part of Nigeria will benefit. So I do not see the South as exclusively belonging to any ethnic or regional grouping, exceptionally. No, it belongs to all Nigerians. So for states that generate more of that, it is because you have more Nigerians from every walk of life living there, domiciled there.
That's why
they're generating that volume of tax revenues enough to benefit more from it. So what we need to do as you describe as public intellectuals is to now push for the true domestication and practice of the principle of democratic citizenship, where it is now practically possible and perfectly so to be Hausa and Lagos.
And be able to meet your aspiration wherever you are.
To be Igbo and Kano, to be Yoruba and Rivers, and to be Kwere and Oyo. We need to now push for democratic citizenship. We heard the news today that Ken Badeno has just emerged as the leader of the almighty Conservative Party, the party of Winston Churchill. Today, he's now the leader of that party, meaning she's one step away from being the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We need to see that here. So for me, this presents an opportunity to have a new conversation around nation building and economic productivity. And this might incentivize it.
Interesting. Madam Baba, I would like to have your own take. What do you think the Northern governors, how do you assess their argument, for outrightly rejecting the bill in their meeting earlier in the week?
Well, first of all, as far as I'm concerned, it's a reflection of what some of us have been saying. I am from the North, and I'm very disappointed with the outlook and the, mindset of the leadership of the Northern elites, in this particular instance, the Northern governors. Highly transactional mindset. It's not strategic. If you look at some of the arguments, particularly that issue of the derivation, I'm a student or I'm a proponent of allocation of resources based on derivation. That is the only thing that will drive productivity. This rent-seeking, commission collection attitude cannot move us forward. And that is the only thing that will chase out people that have no business in government to get out of there. You must have the mindset of value creation and value protection, right? And value innovation for you to lead people. If anybody you can do this, you just go, they bring allocation, you put it in your pocket somewhere. Part of the argument as a Muslim, the derivation, we say alcohol is haram, is prohibited. But the governors go and collect it in the agbada and put it and go away, right? And if we are going to follow that principle, we say, are we also eating haram? Also, it's not haram anymore. But come to think of it, within the same compound also, betting and gambling, there is a proviso that gives high notch of tax collection on betting and gambling. So I see some kind of balance in that regard. And as patriots, as leaders that they are, with profound respect to them, there should be some forward-thinking attitude to this. This running only, because as far as I'm concerned, this is not in the interest of Northerners or not in the interest of Nigeria. Especially when Northerners group themselves and say, hey, this is not in the interest of the North. What are we saying? You have a Northern Governors Forum. Governor Sheyi Makinde spoke on behalf of the forum and NEC. I think that was good enough. You can go back, discuss as a subnational or a region, right, and push your position, whatever it is. And it should be robust and highly intelligent, either through the Senate or through the stakeholders, so that we can have a better tax, system. For example, we should be having conversations about, yes, we should tax the rich more than the poor, and to ensure that within the framework of that bill, that is what is going to happen. Telling me you are going to take 25% from 1.5 million is not supposed to be, because as far as I'm concerned, with what has happened since President Tinubu came into power to date, the value of 1.5 million is less than $1,000 for crying out loud. And then so these are the issues I would have loved to see us chasing. And let me drive a one kobo advice for them to drop this. If we are going with this, let us go forward, and we should never look backward, like Mujid said, about looking at the derivation and all that. And if I'm sitting and I'm advising them, I say, look, when you start doing this and tomorrow you cannot say it shouldn't be done to you. Northern Nigeria is the food basket of the nation. Why don't you sit down and look at the entire value chain of the food we provide to Nigeria, from mutton to beef to whatever, and the entire food. 70% of the food that is consumed in Nigeria and the West African sub-region, I can tell you, comes from Nigeria. So why don't we now come and be creative? Or is it not VAT? Is it no? And see how we can extract value out of that, so long as the item is going out of Kano. Exactly. Those are the kind of conversation I would like us to be having.
Thank you so much. And quite a very exciting conversation, but because of our time, we have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Mr. Majid Dairu and Madam Baba Yusuf for coming to Inside Sources. And we believe, I guess this is the view of the panel, that the National Assembly itself is a forum for these consultations to take place, properly. They even have the authority to make it happen. And there you have it, another edition of Inside Sources. We always say here that Nigeria will prevail. That is why we are here. We will not relent, and we believe we will attain that greatness. Thank you for watching. My name is Laura Kode. I'll see you on Friday.